Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Simon Wright. I am the Director of Programming at Japan House London. Welcome to today's event, Regional Revitalization through Education in Tohoku, Building Sustainable Communities. This is the third talk organized as part of the Tohoku 311 Forward to the Future series in collaboration with Japan's Reconstruction Agency. Today we are broadcasting live from Japan House in front of both a live physical audience and also a virtual audience on Zoom, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. The event is being recorded, and a recording will be archived on our social media platforms following the event. Today's session invites speakers from Japan and the UK to explore the role of education in building sustainable and resilient local communities. First, we will hear from Yui Gentaro, the President and Field Director of MORIUMIUS. MORIUMIUS is a non-profit organization which seeks to revitalize disaster-affected communities through education. It works alongside members of communities affected by the Great East Japan earthquake to operate a sustainable children's learning and experience facility based in a disused primary school building in the town of Ogatsu in Miyagi Prefecture. Following his presentation, we will then hear from Rachel Bentley, Associate Director of the UK's Centre for Local Economic Strategies, or CLES, who will introduce the work of the organisation in the UK in promoting resilient local economies. After both presentations and a panel discussion between Rachel and Yui-san, there will be some time to take some questions from both our physical audience and also those of you who are joining us online. Now I'd like to welcome today's first speaker, Yui Gentaro, who is President and Field Director of MORIUMIUS. He is joining us on Zoom today from Ogatsu in Miyagi Prefecture. Welcome, Yui-san.
Hello.
Hello, thank you very much for joining us and
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
indeed. I will now hand over to you, and without further ado, please let me welcome Yui Gentaro. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been about 11 years since the disaster. It was actually yesterday in Japan time that we had March 11th. 11 years has been passed. A lot of things have changed. Some haven't. And here's a great opportunity for me to let you know in people in England that what's happening here in Tohoku. Even in Japan, not many news information is spreading about Tohoku these days. So I think this opportunity is very important, not only for myself, but I hope it's important for you as well. Let me share some of the slides that I prepared. So MORIUMIUS is the name of the organization as well as the center that we operate. It's behind me in the virtual background. This is in Japanese. If you translate into English, it's forest, ocean, and tomorrow. But us is tomorrow in Japanese, but as you know, it's we in English. So the name of MORIUMIUS itself is trying to explain that utilizing this great natural resource of forest and ocean, let us create the future of children as well as the community. Not only us, but also the local people. But it's very, very important to incorporate other people who have left the community or joining us, trying to revitalize since 2011's disaster. And this is a picture taken in Ogatsu from the highest mountain here. You can kind of see how the mountain and ocean is very close. It's an ideal environment for you to feel what sustainability is. For those of you who do not know well about Japan and where we are, Miyagi, Tokyo is marked in the center, and about 400 kilometers north is Miyagi. It's one of the prefectures that was hit heavily by tsunami. It's right above Fukushima. And in Miyagi, this is where we are. It's marked Ogatsu. And I think you'll see a circle coming up. This is where we are. Two facts I would like to mention. As 11 years have been passed, there's about 3,800 people, 38,000 people are still evacuated, and about 750 temporary houses are still in use. So it's been over 10 years, but there are people still away from their homes, not being able to go back. This is the picture taken before and after the disaster. This is like the downtown of Ogatsu, where 4,300 people were living before the disaster. But after, because it was a coastal line town, the tsunami about 20-meter high struck a few times, and pretty much all of the houses has been destroyed. 80% of the houses, buildings have been destroyed. Thus, the population is now down to about 1,000 people. Next slide picture is a picture I've taken last year, right after the 10-year memorial. These gigantic wall have been built alongside the coastal line by the government. It's about 10 meters high. And you can see some of the buildings above those walls. These are the local businesses, stores, and restaurants that have been built last year. And you can kind of see small houses in the back. This is another 10-meter high, so about 20-meter high from the street level are the permanent houses that the government built. The houses were built back in 2019. So the construction, road constructions are almost over, but it took us about 10 years now to rebuild these roads and walls and grounds for local people to come back and start living their new lives again. Again, the nature here is very rich. We are a part of a national park in Japan. You can really feel what sustainability is. You can see where the water is coming from in the mountains, becoming a stream, and a river goes into the ocean. Even though Japan is covered with a lot of mountains, forest, and ocean, I feel this particular area in Miyagi have the condensity of the nature, the distance between the forest, mountain forest, and ocean is so close. When I first visited this place, I felt that this could be an ideal place for children to experience what it is to live in the nature. So going back to 2011, I am originally from Tokyo, was working in Tokyo back then. We started helping people who were evacuated to the evacuation centers, delivering food almost every weekend. Then we met people in Ogatsu. Ogatsu was a little bit different because the local junior high school's principal asked us to start after school program for these students so they can go to high school. They can study for high school exams. Then in 2012, locals told us that they have this abandoned school that has been closed down since 2002, and it was owned privately, not publicly. So it was, in a way, easy to start renovating to create something that we are now operating. But we are a nonprofit organization. We didn't have resources, no fund, no people. So we asked the volunteers who were coming into this community to help us renovate this facility. So every weekend, a lot of people gathered throughout Japan, even the local people, these elder people who have graduated from the school came out and helped us renovate. Some of the famous volunteers would be Kengo Kuma, who's probably the most famous Japanese architect now, came with his students to help us design this facility. Almost every weekend, about 100 to 200 people, like you can see in this picture, gathered to not only physically help us, but also, introducing us to new people, creating a new network to us, trying to help us getting funds so we can do actual construction so children can stay safely. So it took us about 2.5 years to renovate. It was a very difficult times, especially finding funds to renovate. But in 2015, July of 2015, we opened as MORIUMIUS. Now the facility is open for school groups and families on weekends and holidays to stay and not only enjoy the nature, but actually get a sense of we are living in the nature, by the nature. Three things we feel very important to us is obviously sustainability, but the local people, they are a great resource for children, and as well as diversity of people. So in order to bring children and adults into this community, we feel that the natural resource is a very good source of education, but not only the natural resources, but the people who are living in those environments, as well as people who want to help us, who want to help us create learning opportunities to children, like some of the professionals, like architects to artists to chefs, who would gather to this place to create innovative programs to children. That's what we cherish and try to provide to children in daily basis. Everything comes from nature. Like I said, the energy is coming from the forest. The ingredients are coming out from the farmland and also from the sea. There are not many farmers here in Ogatsu. It's mostly fishermen who is back and active. And with those ingredients and energy source that children got from the forest, they cook. And after they finish cooking, whatever that's left goes back to composting so that we can start farming again. So all this cycle in our lives, and it's difficult these days to feel in the city environment, is very easy for children to understand, not necessarily studying or learning, but they can feel as part of their life experience throughout the time that they stay in MORIUMIUS. Local resources, we call them specialists, from storytellers who tell stories about what happened back in 2011 and what they have been doing for the last 11 years, what their visions are, what they're trying to accomplish through their community. And farmers and fishermen, they are skilled people who understands nature well. So these people become like a specialist, like a teacher to us, to teach children what's like to live in Ogatsu, in these natural environments. And again, some of the professionals that comes from cities like Tokyo, some of the Broadway directors to artists like photographers, calligraphers, painters, and chefs who have traveled throughout the world, came back to Japan, very energetic, very motivated towards passing their experiences to children, would come up to us for a couple of days to provide very innovative, interesting workshops to children. Three things that I felt was very important or successful throughout the making of MORIUMIUS, as well as operating MORIUMIUS since 2015, is these three. Again, because we are nonprofit, we needed people to help us create a center. So in order to do that, we need to spread word through SNS, through people, word of mouth, and a lot of people came to help us, but try to tell the stories, what we like to accomplish, what are our visions, and what we dream about. These stories would influence these people who are helping us, and they would bring more people in, creating more networks of people. And now I feel like some of the core members who are still helping us every year would come up with new ideas, some solutions that we can challenge for MORIUMIUS to be sustainable and better, or for the town Ogatsu to be sustainable and better. So, cherish this process is very, very important. And I think if the government or local government gave us fund to do construction, we would lose these opportunities, these chances. So it was difficult, the 2.5 years making MORIUMIUS, and because of COVID, right now we're in a difficult situation. But because we had this process, we have so many people, network of people who are trying to help us to be sustainable. And I am very glad and thankful for these people. Okay, last page. These are the goals we're trying to accomplish through MORIUMIUS. Obviously, providing learning opportunities to children for them to be a sustainable leader in the future is the first goal. And the second, before COVID, we had about 1,500 people staying at MORIUMIUS every year. That includes not only school groups, but also companies sending their workers to do some training programs in our center. And by having these people visit us, we need staff to operate. We have about 8 staff, full-time staff hired for the center, and half of them are local staff. They have moved out from Ogatsu towards the center because it was more convenient to live. But they wanted to come back to Ogatsu to work because that's their hometown. They are very motivated to have Ogatsu going. And because about 1,000 population now, 70% is over age 70. These people feel happy to see children running around, screaming, or just having to see visitors coming in every day to MORIUMIUS. So that's another important mission, I would say, in rural communities like this, to have people visit and try to encounter as many local people as possible. And the fourth goal would be probably the most important, because we're a nonprofit, but we do not try to rely heavily on donations and grants. Rather, we try to create our income from visitors. By doing that, we are able to purchase local producers from fishermen and farmers, and we can hire local transportation companies to have travel arrangements for guests, and perhaps hire a local cleaning company for them to do laundry of the guests, that the linens that the guests used. So once this circle goes around, and if this goes on for 10, 50, 100 years, not only MORIUMIUS is sustainable as a center, but children, there will be more and more children, there will be more global sustainable leaders on this planet. And at the end, the population of Ogatsu will keep shrinking. That's very difficult to stop. But I hope that the network of people that we're creating, in Japan these days, we call those populations related populations, people who create relationships to these rural communities in Japan. These people would help you, although they are not a resident of Ogatsu. They feel like Ogatsu is their hometown, and they would help you in different ways for the community to be sustainable. So this is, we feel it's very key to create through the education, the programs that we are organizing. And I saw this fact the other day in a conference about related population. About 10 million people over age 18 in metropolitan areas like Tokyo and Osaka have been to the rural communities, not as a leisure travel, but as a volunteer, trying to help the community survive, to be sustainable. So again, through education in a place where natural disasters damage is so heavy, but we already have about 1,500 times 5 years. So a little less than 10,000 people of network. If I can utilize these people and create more network of people, I think I don't have an exact answer or goal yet, but I can feel that we can create a positive impact to Ogatsu, and Ogatsu to be sustainable, and the children who are coming to us now would come back when they are adult. So this is something that we are trying to accomplish. You can find us in internet. You can see our website, or you can see what we do in our YouTube page if you search MORIUMIUS. But I hope this would be useful or interesting information for you. And I hope you can spread word about Tohoku, what's happening to your friends or families and colleagues. And hope one day when COVID is over and you visit Japan, I hope you can take your travel a little bit further north to Tohoku and come visit us and see us. And I'll be happy to welcome you. Thank you so much. And this will be my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yui-san. Thank you very much indeed. I know that you'll be joining us a bit later for some discussion and
yes,
question and answers as well. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would now like to welcome today's second speaker, and that is Rachel Bentley, who will be joining us also online. Welcome, Rachel. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel is Associate Director of the Center for Local Economic Strategies, and she advises local and devolved governments, housing associations, and other public bodies around the UK on how to create more resilient local economies and promote social justice through community wealth building. Her interest in devolution, regionalism, and localism is long held, and she is no stranger to Japan as well. She wrote her first master's thesis on the decentralization of fiscal powers to Japanese local governments as a Monbu Kagakusho scholar at Nagoya University. Her family were living in Kobe during the Great Hanshin earthquake in 1995, and this experience had a profound impact on her family's relationship with Japan and left her with many personal reflections on how different communities respond to crises. Thank you very much, Rachel. We're very privileged to have you join us today. And I will now hand over to you, and you will give us a short presentation before we go into our discussion. Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. And I'm sorry I can't join you today. I actually have COVID, so I'm dialing in from home. But it's nice to be with you in spirit. So as Simon said, I am an Associate Director at the Centre for Local Economic Strategies, and we are a small organisation that works around the UK championing progressive economics that work for people, planet and place. And we're really happiest when we're in the field working with organisations like Yui-san's organisation, which is really trying to kind of create fairer and more resilient and sustainable economies. And we do that because it's clear to us at CLES that our current system really isn't working, and it's not delivering on the grand challenges that we face and enabling people to live full and thriving lives. We clearly can't continue like this. So we partner with local partners, whether that be local governments, schools, colleges, universities, non-profit organisations and others, to really create what we call community wealth building, which is a people-centred approach to local economic development. And what that does is it really looks at kind of where are the wealth flows in a local economy, and tries to place control of those kind of local wealth flows back into the hands of people and and that place in a way that preserves and protects the planet as well. Now, fundamentally, it's not just about local economies. It's not just about localism. It's also about generative local economies. So really saying, who is it who gets to participate? Who is it? Is wealth being shared fairly between businesses, people, and the place that you are really looking to work with? And when I was thinking about this, and my work these days is very domestic. I work exclusively these days in the UK, but it is clear that Japan and the UK face some similar challenges, particularly around kind of rural and urban divides, around the aging population, around a rise in insecure work, that has really changed kind of in the kind of past few decades. And the fact that we're both kind of island nations, but I think most primarily that we face this ever-present threat from the climate emergency and just how that is impacting how our societies and our economies work. And at Claire's, what we try to do through community wealth building, sorry, my cat is just invading the presentation, is that we really try to have a complete rethink of economic development and really saying who is creating local wealth. Is our economy an inclusive one? Does it work for the people who live there? Does it work for future generations as well as present ones? And we really try to kind of build it around this idea of well-being, an inclusive, well-being built economy, rather than one that's exclusively focused on growth. So we do this by looking at kind of what we call the 5 pillars of community wealth building. So the first one is about kind of where you spend money. Who do you buy from? What is going on in that kind of local supply chain? So thinking about what Yui-san just said, kind of, are you really trying to bring local businesses into those kind of spending flows? What kind of jobs are you creating? It's pretty clear from evidence that a well-paid, secure job that allows a person to thrive is the best kind of way to create a thriving life. So are the jobs that you are creating in a place well paid and secure? How is land and property being used in a place? So thinking about Yui-san's example of the school. So is, where are your facilities, and are you using them in a way that really kind of shares and allows people to come together? Are you using them for community growing, if that's an option? Are you using them thinking about the climate emergency? Are you using them for kind of solar farms or wind farms or whatever it may be? Are you creating spaces where your kind of voluntary and community groups can come together and use the space, at an affordable or maybe free rent, recognizing that is once again creating a more resilient local economy? Thinking about who owns businesses, thinking about the Tohoku region, obviously, it's got farming and fishing, but how are those businesses being owned? Are they able to come together? Are they being collective in their goals and their challenges? And also thinking about, once again, about your aging population. Do you have a way that allows businesses to be transitioned to a next generation? Sorry about this. And then finally, thinking about wealth flows. And so where is the money going in your economy? In the UK, and I think it's less of a challenge in Japan, but it's been a few years since I studied there. But really thinking about who gets to benefit. So when money comes in, thinking about the big infrastructure investments that have had to happen in Tohoku following the earthquake. Are they being kind of rooted in a way that really kind of creates a local wealth in the place, or are they actually being extracted out again? So thinking about that as well. So as I say, this isn't about localism necessarily, oh my goodness, but also thinking about generative economies. So we often hear that community wealth building is just common sense. Well, of course, everyone wants to build a stronger local economy, but that doesn't mean that it is done easily. It really does require a shift in perspective. It requires a shift in perspective about who creates wealth in a local economy. And are you really, as I say, moving away from that shift on economic growth and thinking about who is a social actor as well, who is really trying to create a more resilient, thriving local place? So whose goals is the economy working towards? And challenging that set narrative once again about what defines success. It's calls for rethinking about power. Who gets to have a say in what the society is that you want to build? I mean, we wouldn't want anywhere to go through what Tohoku went through in 2011, or anywhere else that experiences those kind of natural disasters. But really trying to say, what is the future you want to build? What is the opportunity to create that kind of co-design and co-develop the future? Thinking about who is an economic actor in your place, who is a social actor, and who is promoting these objectives. And then finally, and most importantly, I think, weaving climate action through everything. It can no longer be this supplemental add-on that you add on to kind of economic action. It must weave through everything. It must be integral. And it is most fundamentally about breaking that cycle of short-term thinking that unfortunately is too pervasive in our kind of political and economic current body of thought. So really thinking about those sustainable goals. Now, as I say, we often hear that this is common sense, and we would agree, but it doesn't make it easy. It requires that real rethinking of purpose around collective goals. That requires political bravery and collective action from all quarters, whether they be public, private, or community-led organisations. And it strikes me hearing Yui-san speak today that here in the UK we have a lot to learn from places like Ogatsu and in Tohoku, but also the work of organisations like MORIUMIUS. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel, and your introduction to Claire's, and also thank you for your cat as well to join us as well. We now go into a discussion where we will talk about some of the issues, and then after that we will go on to take some questions from our audience here in Japan House and also online. So I will receive questions as well through my laptop here. So please do submit your questions if you're watching us from afar. Thank you very much. Yui-san, if I may.
Yes.
Maybe we talk a little bit about place, first of all. Thank you for explaining what the name means. Once you said it was mori, umi, and asu, it makes a lot of sense about how the environment is key to your concept, and how the future is also key to it. I was interested to hear about the fact that you were situated in a national park, and maybe if we talk about a little bit about the natural surroundings first of all. Did you encounter, or are you encountering, any difficulties with regard to the fact that it is in such a place?
Yes, I think two things. First is because it's national park, we have to deal with government all the time because there are so many regulations that we have to go over. And second would be because this was a public school. Public school are not built for people to stay. So the renovation process was very difficult to change these classrooms into where people can stay, to be warm enough, to have enough water to bath, or even to dine. So physical, in order for MORIUMIUS to be renovated, there were some difficulties we had, but local residents were very supportive, especially for those who have graduated from the school. They have very strong attachment to the school, so they were more than happy. This was something a little bit different from disaster recovery. It was their closed school being reborn. So the communities support and energy was very, very strong, even from the beginning.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to move maybe over to Rachel, if I may. Rachel, the approach of MORIUMIUS is long-term and collaborative. It uses the natural surroundings and local places as a tool for teaching different generations about their shared environment. Are you aware of any similar approaches in the UK?
Yeah, so in Scotland, they have committed to using to building a well-being economy. So that is developing an economy which stays built around kind of well-being goals as opposed to kind of economic growth. And I think Scotland provides a kind of interesting example because you've got once again kind of very rural population, certainly in large parts of the Highlands and the islands, and kind of depopulation, certainly thinking around, and children, and kind of loss of industry. So really trying to think differently about kind of who gets to share and what you prioritize. The other thing I was thinking, just thinking of Yui-san's example around the school. So in Scotland, there's been a lot of work around what we call community asset transfers. So looking at what would formerly have been a kind of public building, maybe a kind of town hall or a village hall or something like that, that is then kind of getting transferred into community ownership, because it very much in kind of rural places, those kind of buildings, so they're a kind of focal point where people can come together, which is quite different, I think, to a kind of urban environment where you would often have a lot more opportunities for collaboration. The other one that I just wanted to mention though as well is Wales. So Wales is the first country in the world which has adopted what is known as the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, and that requires that every law that is passed in Wales must not only think about the kind of impact of that law on current generations, but also future generations. And it really is something quite revolutionary, I think pretty much anywhere in the world, of that kind of shift towards a long-term thinking and really kind of say getting past that kind of pure focus on economic growth and saying kind of what is this actually doing for us culturally, and as thinking about the planet, but also thinking about the generations that are going to come. So two kind of rather big examples there, I think, but that's what I'm saying. I think there's a lot to be learned from kind of grassroots action such as what Yui-san's doing, and also what the state can also do from the top down level.
Thank you. Yes, I suppose there must be some form of difference in Japan and the UK as well. Just for you, Yui-san, just to say, it centers around a disused school. There seem to be many of such locations in Japan. In many rural populations, there are disused schools, maybe slightly different in the UK, I'm not sure. It seems to be a model that would fit all over the country, in fact, for you. I was, to stay with you, Yui-san, if I may, I was intrigued by the creation of opportunities through visiting specialists, for example. Especially, you mentioned the work of Kumakengo, who came to work with you. Could you possibly tell us a little bit more about those kinds of projects and the kinds of examples that you briefly mentioned in your presentation?
Sure. Kenko Kuma, we had a mutual friend. So it wasn't that I knew him and I approached him for this opportunity. It was very interesting because he was already organizing a workshop to invite foreign architect students to go to Ise Shrine, because Ise Shrine rebuilds every 20 years. So Kengo Kuma wanted to have the students see how this traditional Japanese wood construction have been sustainable for over thousands of years, and how see these craftsmen actually rebuild Ise Shrine. So I had opportunity to meet him and ask him if he could come up to Ogatsu from Ise Because Ise, you only learn, you only see, and you do not be able to work with people, the craftsmen of the Ise Shrine. So why don't you output the learnings that you had in Ise in Ogatsu? Because we are a wooden school, not as old as Ise Shrine, but students perhaps can come up with some kind of output that they learned. So it took them about 26 or 7 hours by bus from Ise to Ogatsu. Most students, I have a feeling that they had no idea why they were traveling further up north and why they came to us. But I gave presentation, told the story about the school. This school has been around for about 90 years. Had the local people talk about what kind of school it was, and let them create a design for about a half a day. They did a workshop with various students together, working to come up with some design ideas. And the master plan of MORIUMIUS was using those bits of ideas that the students came up with, including Kengo Kuma. So this was very important, that I wasn't planning to have him involved or have famous architect involved. It was course of these process that I was asking different people that we need to come up with master plan. I don't have enough money to hire an architect. Is there someone who could help us? And some of the friends that heard that story came up with an idea, connected me and Kengo Kuma, and after several months, we had a master plan. So this is something that nonprofit organization do all the time. But again, I like to mention that this process is the key to any projects, or especially in community rebuilding, revitalization, I think.
Thank you very much. I see. I'm intrigued about your mention of the process orientation, and I can see a lot of synergy there as well with what Rachel was talking about. You were talking about co-design and co-development, and these processes I can see work very much together as well for the UK as much. I wonder, Rachel, if I may just ask, you mentioned about how to understand who has the power within communities and organizations, and how you learn to work with in the right directions there. How much time do you need to spend? It seems quite important to me, that judgment. How much time do you need to spend in order to be able to work that out within the project as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the most challenging things that faces anyone who's kind of working in kind of public policy and kind of this idea of participation and co-design, that there's a feeling that almost it kind of slows you down, because you may think, oh, I've got the answer to the problem, this is what we need to do, but actually bringing in people along the way is much more likely to kind of result in a better outcome, but also get that kind of buy-in and really get something that delivers. And I think there has been a real shift in perspective that actually all kind of work really does need to have this kind of co-participation, participatory design, co-delivery and co-design along the path. Because very often right now in the UK, you're kind of presented with two options. Do you want this as a type of park, or do you want that as a type of park? And you kind of get to vote on either one, when actually the question should be, right, do you want a park? And then what kind of park do you want? It's a very, very simple, maybe silly example, but I'm in London, and there was an area where kind of they were proposing doing a community growing place, and thought, this is a lovely idea. But actually, when they spoke to the families that were living in the area, those families said, actually, what we'd really like is an area where we can barbecue, because that fit in much more with the kind of cultural environment that they had. But the rules and regulations in that particular part of London were that you couldn't have have a barbecue. So, you know, just say it's a very trivial example, but by asking that question kind of 6 months later down the line, oh, do you like this community growing area we've got for you? They're like, no, because we actually would like to have a barbecuing space. So I would say, I don't think it's necessary you can put a time frame on it, but it's about weaving it in all along the process and really trying to hear those voices. And it probably will slow you down, but I think it will actually create better outcomes.
Thank you. Just as we wind down this discussion area before we go on to the question and answers from anybody in our audiences, to you, Yui-san, if I may, you mentioned, of course, that the approach of MORIUMIUS is long term. It's the asu in your name, and how long are you looking into the future? What is the future? What does that mean for you and your organization?
There are many things that I have in mind, but first would be we mainly focused on the children aged from like 6 to 12, so primary schools. So some of them have returned to us as interns when they become high school students. So we've been around for 6 years. Some of them came back as interns. So I would love to see them in 20s or 30s or 40s coming back to us, perhaps to work for MORIUMIUS or come to Ogatsu every year, somehow keep helping Ogatsu and create some positive impact. So that would be something that I would love to see in, I would say, 20, 30 years. But a little shorter term, the local government have decided to create agricultural park where the tsunami destroyed. So the coastal line will be covered with greens and flowers and vegetables and fruits. And they will be run by local residents or local companies or local organizations like us. And we will be doing we'll be growing grapes and create winery there because there are not many wineries in Miyagi and there are not many wineries in Tohoku areas, in the Pacific coastal areas. So that will probably become in about 5 to 10 years. So the locally, in the closer, shorter term, I would see more people gathering, creating a very interesting impact through grapes and wines.
Thank you very much. I think I've got lots of questions for you. I will sit down in the room together, actually, with you and Rachel and speak more. But we have some questions coming through online, and I'm sure we have some questions here in the room as well. But maybe we could move on to questions from our audience, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yui-san, this is for you. Thank you very much for this interesting talk. A question to you, Yui-san. Do you see similar organizations in other prefectures following your example in the future and joining forces to broaden MORIUMIUS' mission?
Interesting questions. Not exact same, but every rural parts of Japan, areas of Japan are suffering, and they're all trying to bring people in from the cities. And they all have natural resources and they all have wisdoms from these elder people. So they could do what we are doing. I don't think we're doing something so special, so innovative. It's just the way of using the local resources. So there are campgrounds. There are this place called nature schools in Japan that governments are funding. But they are not focused on the well-being, like Rachel said. What is it like to live with nature? What is sustainability with nature? There are local rural areas of Japan that's bringing so many people into their community, but not necessarily through education. So similar, but not exact will be the answer.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I wonder if we have any questions in the room. We do, actually. So thank you very much. we will give you a microphone. If you could keep your hand up, please. Thank you, so that your microphone can arrive. And this microphone will allow our viewers as well online to be able to hear, and of course, Yui-san and Rachel. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Julia. I live in London, and my question to Rachel: how do you choose the area you are going to work with? What is your, how do you prioritize? Because obviously it's not one area. So if you could just, tell a little bit more about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so we are often, as I say, we're a small charity, and so we are invited to kind of scrutinise and support local places. Often we're invited in by the kind of local authority to kind of look at, maybe it can be, as I say, across those kind of 5 principles that I talked about, or it may be looking at something really narrow. As I say, it could be about an issue around housing, it could be an issue around energy, it could be something else. But actually the most work that we've been doing lately in the UK is with the Scottish Government and the state in Wales, and actually increasingly as well in Northern Ireland. So we're kind of branching out into 3 of the nations of the UK. But yes, most of our work has been kind of in the north of England and I say the 3 other nations of the UK.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your question. Thank you. Thank you. We have another question from someone online as well now. Actually, this is for both of you, so for both Yui-san and for Rachel. It's from Eliana in London. How do you feel about the support received or not received from local and central government in the development, and in the case of Japan, in the way that MORIUMIUS has thrived? And this is for both Yui-san and for Rachel. Maybe Yui-san, I can ask you first.
Sure. Should I go first? Very good question. As you probably know, Japan is still a kind of conservative country. Politics is certainly conservative, I think. And there are so much fund put into Tohoku area after the disaster for the last 11 years. But as you saw in the pictures I've shown, most of those funds goes to constructions. Some of the construction, especially like the wall, not necessarily local residents have agreed or demanded to build. So I see more those powerful people putting fund budget to constructions that necessarily is not needed or wanted by the local residents. So I think that Rachel was mentioning that fact that even the central government as well as the local government are still thinking very old-fashioned way to spend these taxes to just construction and not something more soft project or that the local people really needs. Like, we don't get a lot of funds from the central government, but there's so much, an enormous amount of money spent in construction, not just Ogatsu. This is about Fukushima, Miyagi, and Iwate, 3 prefectures included. So the answer would be no, unfortunately.
Thank you. And maybe Rachel.
Yeah, and I was going to agree with that as well. I think when you look at the headline sums, these are enormous sums, so you can say, oh, wow, look, there's X billion been spent in, wherever. But actually, as I say, the fundamental question is this being spent on things that make people's lives better? Are you actually starting at the right place? And also, thinking, as I say, we could go on for hours about kind of large infrastructure projects, and clearly we do need infrastructure. It is important, but it's like, what is being built? How is it being built? And really, what is it delivering? And I think most local governments in most local places around the world would say what we would like is that kind of autonomy to spend money in a way that really works for our local needs. And very often that is not the case. It is being delivered in a way that has conditions on how it is spent. So often it's not just the amount of money, it's the restrictions on it. It must be spent in a certain time frame on certain things. So yeah, going back all those 20 years to when I was at Nagoya University, my dissertation back then was arguing for more autonomy about how to spend local money in Japan. So it seems 20 years on, we haven't changed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have another question maybe in the room? We do. We have a question from someone at the back. If you could keep your hand up, please. Keep your hand up so that the microphone can come to you. Thank you very much.
Oh, hello. My name's Anthea. I was wondering about if food was grown around the school to create a healthy diet, and whether fishing, just to support communities in that way.
So that is for Yui-san, yes? Is that correct?
Apologies, yeah.
Yes, Yui-san. So if you heard the question that is food grown around the school?
Yes. We do not have large flat land because we are in the mountains, but we do have few organic farms that we grow vegetables with children so that they could use to cook. But we don't try to grow enough vegetables for ourselves because we want to buy from the farmers. Again, spending locally is important factor of doing MORIUMIUS. So we try to buy as much rice or vegetables grown locally. So try to balance. Doing the organic farming here is more for children to learn. It's part of the experience.
Thank you very much. Do we have maybe, we have anybody else in this room who'd like please put your hands up. So we have two we can take here. I'll take one from this side here. If you could keep your hand up, please, so that we can, thank you very much. That's the first one, and then it's okay. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Loche, and thank you very much for the interesting talk. I wanted to know if you have done any environmental impact study about the work that you have done there, because I think in today's time with the climate crisis being an existential issue, and with the economic regeneration development also comes a lot of emission with all the infrastructure construction and the tourism you're trying to increase. Have you taken any measures to counterbalance that, the environmental issue with the work that you're doing? I am in that work myself, so I'm interested to learn anything that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, my answer would be please come to us and help us find out what you mentioned. Obviously, we do not have enough resource to do that. I would love to work on some of the things that you mentioned. I am very, very interested in right now because the ocean environment have been changing rapidly. There are a lot of fishermen who farms like scallops, oysters in the bay. Scallops has been changing. They're not growing well. They're observing poison that the human cannot consume. The water temperature is rising, so the environment is changing rapidly in the ocean, and we would like to do something for that. But we have not started. We don't know how, and we haven't done any research on what we're currently doing. So thank you for mentioning. I will try to work on it sometime when I can. But I need your help.
That sounds like an offer. Thank you very much. And I know we have one more question here in the room, and then I will go to the last question, which we have from online as well. So please, thank you.
I'll be quick. Thank you so much. And thank you to Yui-san and Rachel for this great talk. I'm finding it quite interesting. So looking from a perspective of considering this to apply elsewhere, So I'm curious around the autonomy for governments, and given that you've both been thinking about this and considering it for a period of time, when governments put money out, they often have a lot of people to respond to. And with the concept of giving people in the local areas more autonomy, do you have a view of how that could work better, that people who are thinking of implementing some of this can leverage on to make that process a bit easier? In terms of when the money comes in, how can you work with potentially the government to encourage them to give that local economy a bit more autonomy? So from your experience, have you come to any kind of aha moment yet? Maybe this is me asking to boil the ocean, but curious to hear your thoughts.
Interesting, interesting. Maybe Rachel, would you like to take that first?
I was going to say that really is a very big question, but yeah, I guess I think the first thing to say is that this does require that really rethinking. You know, the current economic model is not shaped for a way in which does really look at that kind of broader concept of well-being. I mean, just if we think about how we measure things, you know, you think about, oh, you know, has GDP increased? Has unemployment gone down? Have house prices risen? You know, those measures only tell you one thing. They don't tell you really how the economy is really working for people's lives. But no, at Claire's, say we've worked in local places, you know, around the UK, and what we're most known for is the Preston model. I didn't want to talk about it today because it gets a bit too I don't know quite what the phrase is, complicated, but so really that was about really kind of looking at Preston, looking at their economy and saying, what do we have here and how can we rewire our economy that really works for us? So it was really looking at those financial flows that were going on in a particular place and really starting to spend that money in a way that worked to address very hyper local problems there around unemployment, insecure work, weak local supply chains. So really looking to strengthen that. But I say fundamentally, I think it's about respecting the autonomy of locally elected governments to act in the best interests of people. Now, I'm not saying there shouldn't be safeguards. I'm not saying there shouldn't be other, you know, governance considerations, but fundamentally it's starting from that position of trust. Yui-san, I don't know if you have anything to say from the Japanese perspective.
Local project wise, I haven't really seen a lot of, you know, local government spending their funds well. But central government wise, one project that I would like to mention is that they're encouraging more and more younger generations in the cities to move out to the rural areas. So there's this support program that the government would fund for 3 years of your paid salary for 3 years and choose the rural areas in Japan. And the local government will help you job, which normally would be in the city office working in tourism. But that system is very well, and some of the local towns are utilizing that program, having like 15 or 20 people coming in from the cities, and half of them are usually staying and decide to live in that community. So it is very important to have, you know, not only to educate local people for their future, but also to have, you know, impact from different ideas from other areas of Japan, especially from the cities. So that program is very interesting, and our town have decided to incorporate that from this year. So we have applied, and we're kind of waiting for someone to, you know, raise their hand and work for us using the fund from the government.
Thank you both of you. I do have one last question. This is online, and it's actually a number of people have asked it. It's about volunteering in Japan. So we have somebody who's going to Iwate this summer, a teacher, hopefully being able to visit. And we also, that's John, and we have Danielle, who's hopefully going to Miyagi in the near future. How can one volunteer? Are there possibilities?
As for MORIUMIUS, you could send us an email through our website. We had a lot of roofers. I don't know the roof system you probably have in the UK as well, but we are out from that system. So the best way is to contact us through email, through our website.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So positive for the future when we're all able to travel to Japan, which I hope is in the not too distant future. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Thank you very much indeed, Yui-san and Rachel, for joining us. I know Rachel, especially in your situation of self-isolation at the moment. Thank you so much for making the effort. It's much appreciated. And for staying up late with us, Yui-san, in Miyagi. And thank you, everybody, also here in the hall and online. Thank you for joining us. If you've booked for this event, you will receive a short feedback email. Please do fill that in. That will help us to continue to do things like this in the future with your comments. Upcoming events, just to say, of course, this is the second from last in our event series, Tohoku 311, Forward to the Future. Please do stay around and look at our display or take part in some of the workshops. If there are any spaces free, there might not be, but there might be some sake available or some peach juice if you wish. And tomorrow we have the last in our event series, Social Enterprise in Tohoku, Smart Strawberries. That is also at 1 o'clock as well. If you're interested, it may be worth talking to some of our staff members to see if you can join that. Thank you very much. Thank you for making the effort to join us at Japan House and also for joining us online. And once again, if you will join me in thanking both Yui-san and Rachel for their extraordinarily interesting introduction to their work in both Japan and the UK. Thank you very much.